The studio lights of the Today with Hoda Jenna show blazed brightly as Carrie Underwood settled into the guest chair, her signature blonde hair catching the glow. The audience clapped warmly, their excitement palpable for the country music superstar who had just returned as a judge on American Idol. Hoda and Jenna Hager, the hosts, beamed with their usual charm, ready to dive into a conversation about Carrie's latest projects, including her Las Vegas residency and her role in NBC's Sunday Night Football. The atmosphere felt light, with laughter bouncing between the trio as they discussed Carrie's farm life in Tennessee, where she raises sheep and grows vegetables with her husband, Mike Fisher, and their two sons, Isaiah and Jacob. But beneath the surface, there was a subtle tension. Carrie, known for her poised demeanor, seemed slightly guarded, her smiles not quite reaching her eyes. The hosts, eager to keep the energy high, pressed on with questions about her recent American Idol experience, asking how it felt to judge contestants after being a contestant herself 20 years ago. Carrie answered thoughtfully, sharing how her faith and family grounded her through the whirlwind of fame. Yet, as the conversation shifted to more personal territory, specifically her balance of motherhood and career, Jenna's probing question about whether Carrie ever felt overwhelmed struck a nerve. The audience didn't notice at first, but Carrie's posture stiffened, her hands clasping tightly in her lap. She responded politely, explaining how she leans on her community in Nashville, but her tone carried an edge, hinting at discomfort with the line of questioning. Jenna, perhaps unaware of the shift, pushed further, asking if Carrie ever felt pressure to be a perfect mom in the public eye. The question, meant to be relatable, seemed to hit too close to home for Carrie, who had spoken in the past about the challenges of parenting under scrutiny. Her smile faltered, and she paused, choosing her words carefully, saying, "I do my best, like any mom, but I don't think anyone's perfect." The audience clapped in support, but the air in the studio grew heavier, the hosts exchanging quick glances as if sensing they'd touched on something sensitive. Carrie's history of resiliency overcoming a 2017 accident that left her with a broken wrist and facial stitches flashed through her mind, reminding her how she'd fought to maintain her privacy. The conversation continued, but the seeds of unease had been planted, setting the stage for what would soon unfold. As the segment progressed, Hoda pivoted to lighter topics, asking Carrie about her recent duet with Cody Johnson, "I'm Gonna Love You," which had just hit #1 on country radio. The audience cheered, and Carrie relaxed slightly, her passion for music taking center stage. She shared how collaborating with Cody was a dream, their voices blending to create something raw and heartfelt. The hosts nodded enthusiastically, with Hoda mentioning how Carrie's faith often shines through in her music, referencing her 2021 album, My Savior. Carrie smiled genuinely, explaining how her spirituality guides her work and life, a theme she's woven into songs like Jesus, Take the Wheel. But Jenna, eager to keep the conversation dynamic, steered it back to Carrie's personal life, asking about a recent tabloid rumor suggesting tension in her marriage with Mike Fisher due to her busy schedule. The question landed like a thunderclap. Carrie's face froze, her eyes narrowing slightly as she processed the intrusion. The audience, unaware of the rumor's lack of truth, murmured in surprise, hanging on her response. Carrie took a deep breath, her voice steady but firm, saying, "Mike and I are stronger than ever." "Rumors like that are just noise." Hoda, sensing the discomfort, tried to smooth things over, joking about how tabloids love to stir drama. But Jenna, perhaps caught up in the moment, doubled down, asking if the pressures of fame ever strained their relationship, given Mike's quieter life as a former hockey player. The question was meant to be empathetic, but it felt like a challenge to Carrie, who had spent years shielding her family from public scrutiny. Her jaw tightened, and she leaned forward, her voice low but pointed, "I think it's unfair to drag my family into this. We're private people." The studio fell silent, the audience sensing the shift from casual chat to something more intense. Hoda jumped in, trying to redirect to Carrie's upcoming projects, but the damage was done. Carrie's usually warm demeanor had cooled, her hands now fidgeting with the edge of her dress. The hosts, realizing they'd crossed a line, exchanged uneasy looks, but the show had to go on, and the tension hung like a storm cloud over the set. The commercial break offered a brief reprieve, but the atmosphere backstage was charged. Carrie sat quietly in her chair, sipping water, while her team whispered nearby. Sensing her frustration, Hoda and Jenna huddled with producers, recalibrating their approach for the next segment. When the cameras rolled again, Hoda took the lead, asking Carrie about her fitness journey and her book, Find Your Path, which detailed her struggles with body image after American Idol. Carrie opened up, sharing how she once restricted herself to 800 calories a day, a mistake she corrected after learning to prioritize health over appearance. The audience connected with her vulnerability, applauding her honesty. But Jenna, perhaps trying to regain momentum, interjected with a question about whether Carrie felt pressure to maintain her image as a role model, especially after her 2017 accident that left visible scars. The mention of the accident, which Carrie had discussed openly but sparingly, felt like another overstep. Her eyes flashed with a mix of hurt and defiance, and she responded sharply, "I've never hidden my scars. They're part of my story, but I don't owe anyone an explanation for how I look." The audience gasped softly, sensing the confrontation brewing. Hoda tried to lighten the mood, praising Carrie's resilience, but Jenna, perhaps unaware of how her questions were landing, pressed on, asking if Carrie ever felt judged by fans for her choices as a public figure. The question, framed as curiosity, felt like an accusation to Carrie, who had navigated years of media scrutiny with grace. Her voice rose slightly, a rare crack in her composure. "I'm here to talk about my music and my work, not to be dissected from my personal life." The studio grew quiet. The audience caught between admiration for her candor and shock at the escalating tension. Hoda, ever the peacemaker, suggested moving to a fan Q&A, but Carrie's patience was wearing thin, her hands now clenched tightly as she prepared for the next question, bracing herself for what might come. The fan Q&A segment was meant to be a fun, light-hearted moment, with audience members asking Carrie about her favorite songs or tour memories. The first few questions were softballs of favorite moments from her Las Vegas residency, her thoughts on mentoring young artists on American Idol. Carrie answered with warmth, sharing stories of naming a lamb after the recent Idol winner, Jamal Roberts, and crocheting a tomato-themed shirt for a taping. The audience laughed, and for a moment, the tension eased. But then a fan, emboldened by the earlier exchange, asked about how Carrie handles criticism from the media about her parenting choices, referencing a recent article that questioned her decision to limit her son's screen time. The question, though well-meaning, reignited Carrie's frustration. She leaned forward, her voice steady but laced with exasperation. "I'm a mom, not a headline. I make choices for my boys because I know them, not because some writer thinks they know better." The audience erupted in applause, but Jenna, perhaps trying to keep the conversation flowing, followed up by asking if Carrie ever felt torn between her career and being present for her kids. It was a question many working mothers face, but in this moment, it felt like another jab at Carrie's carefully guarded personal life. Her eyes narrowed, and she set her microphone down, a deliberate move that sent a ripple of shock through the studio. "I think we're done here," she said quietly, standing up and walking off the set. The audience gasped, and Hoda, caught off guard, stammered, "We'll be right back after this break." Backstage, Carrie's team rushed to her side, while producers scrambled to manage the fallout. The cameras cut to a commercial, but the buzz in the studio was electric, with audience members whispering about what they'd just witnessed. Carrie, now in her dressing room, took a deep breath, her mind racing with thoughts of her family and the constant pressure to be perfect in the public eye. Back on set, Hoda and Jenna returned after the break, their smiles strained as they addressed the audience. Hoda, ever the professional, explained that Carrie had to step away unexpectedly but sent her love to the fans. Jenna, looking chastened, added a quick apology, saying, "We got a little off track there, and we're so grateful for Carrie's time." The audience clapped politely, but the energy in the room had shifted, with many fans feeling protective of Carrie. Social media was already lighting up with clips of the exchange, fans praising Carrie for standing up for herself while others debated whether the hosts had gone too far. Backstage, Carrie sat with her manager, processing the moment. She hadn't planned to walk off, but the cumulative weight of personal questions about her marriage, her appearance, her parenting had pushed her to a breaking point. She thought of her sons, Isaiah and Jacob, and how fiercely she protected their privacy. The 2017 accident, which left her with scars and a long recovery, had taught her to set boundaries, and today, she'd enforce them. Her team reassured her that she'd handled it with grace, but Carrie felt a mix of relief and regret, wondering if she'd been too harsh. Meanwhile, the producers were in crisis mode, trying to salvage the segment by pivoting to a pre-recorded performance of Carrie's latest single. The audience watched the screens as Carrie's powerful vocals filled the studio, a reminder of her talent and resilience. Online, the narrative was splitting as some called her walk-off a diva move, while others saw it as a powerful stand against invasive questions. Carrie, unaware of the online storm, texted Mike, who responded with unwavering support, reminding her to stay true to herself. As the show wrapped, Hoda and Jenna filmed a quick segment to address the incident, emphasizing their respect for Carrie and their intent to keep the conversation light. They invited her back, promising a focus on her music and achievements. In her dressing room, Carrie watched the segment on a monitor, her emotions mixed. She appreciated the gesture but wasn't sure she'd return anytime soon. Her mind drifted to her farm in Tennessee, where she could be herself, attending to her garden, baking with her boys, and finding peace away from the spotlight. The incident reminded her why she'd scaled back public appearances in recent years, choosing projects like her SiriusXM channel, Carrie's Country, that let her connect with fans on her terms. She thought about her 2020 documentary with Mike, where they discussed their differences, his love for hunting, her vegetarianism, and how their faith kept them grounded. That faith was her anchor now, guiding her through the chaos of the day. Outside, fans gathered, hoping to catch a glimpse of her, some holding signs with lyrics from Blown Away, a song about resilience in the face of hardship. Carrie smiled faintly, touched by their support. She slipped out the side exit, avoiding the crowd, and headed to her hotel, where she called her mom for advice. Her mother, a former teacher, reminded her that strength comes from knowing when to walk away. Carrie nodded, feeling lighter, ready to focus on her next chapter, mentoring on American Idol, performing at the Grand Ole Opry, and cherishing quiet moments with her family. The fallout from the walk-off dominated entertainment news for days, with outlets dissecting every moment of the exchange. Some praised Carrie for setting boundaries, citing her history of overcoming adversity, from her 2017 accident to the miscarriages she and Mike endured before welcoming Jacob. Others speculated about behind-the-scenes drama, though no evidence supported such claims. On social media, fans launched hashtags like #StandWithCarrie, sharing stories of how her music had inspired them through tough times. Carrie stayed offline, focusing on her family and upcoming projects. She spent a day in the studio with Ben Fuller, recording a duet that felt like a return to her roots, raw, faith-driven, and authentic. The incident faded from her mind as she poured herself into her work, but the industry took note. Talk shows began rethinking how they approach personal questions, with some hosts publicly reflecting on the need for sensitivity. Hoda and Jenna, in a later episode, dedicated a segment to discussing boundaries, using the incident as a learning moment without naming Carrie directly. They shared how they'd reached out to her privately, hoping to mend the rift. Carrie, gracious as ever, sent a handwritten note thanking them for their outreach but declined an immediate return. She was busy preparing for the 20th anniversary of Some Hearts, her debut album that changed country music, with a special vinyl release planned. The milestone reminded her of her journey from a small-town Oklahoma girl to a global superstar and how she'd fought to stay true to herself. The walk-off, though unplanned, became a symbol of that fight, resonating with fans who saw her as more than a celebrity, but a woman navigating life's challenges with courage. Weeks later, Carrie returned to the public eye at the Opry 100 celebration, where she performed a tribute to Randy Travis that earned a standing ovation. Mike joined her on the red carpet, their first public appearance together since the incident, signaling their unity and strength. The performance was a reminder of why Carrie remains a beloved figure: her voice, her heart, and her authenticity. In interviews, she focused on her music and faith, steering clear of the talk show drama. When asked about it indirectly, she smiled and said, "I'm just focused on what matters in my family, my fans, and the music." The incident, while a flashpoint, became a footnote in her storied career. Fans continued to stream her songs, from Before He Cheats to I'm Gonna Love You, finding solace in her stories of resilience. Back home, Carrie walked through her orchard, her boys running ahead, chasing chickens. She laughed, the weight of the spotlight lifting. The walk-off hadn't defined her, it had reminded her of her power to choose when to stay and when to leave. As she prepared for her next American Idol taping, she thought about the contestants, young dreamers like she once was, and vowed to mentor them with the same honesty she'd always lived by. The storm had passed, and Carrie Underwood stood stronger than ever, her roots deep in the soil of her Tennessee farm and the heart of country music.